Wouldn't that be awesome if we were not afraid anymore? In any way, shape, or form? Oh, I love you, Charcel. So, we're in week 4 of our book study, and this is about our wild well-being. And I loved this when I saw this. It's not just about well-being, it's about our wild well-being. There's something that Tama is inviting us into, that we are actually inviting ourselves into, that is about showing up in a way that doesn't fit into the boxes, right? Doesn't fit into any kind of box whatsoever. So I talked about Rosh Hashanah being this week, it was Monday night, and Yom Kippur is coming up, and this time between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur is what's called the Days of Awe. And it is a time in the Jewish tradition where you really spend these 10 days sitting with, what do you need to reconcile within yourself? What is it that was not in alignment with who you are? What is it that you need to make amends for? What are the behaviors? Because remember, we're not our behaviors. What are our behaviors that don't reflect the truth of who we are? And how would we like to shift those for the coming year? Now, of course, in the more traditional understanding of this, right, there's this giant book of judgment, and it's slowly closing throughout the days of awe, and if you don't get it all figured out and cleaned up before the book closes, then you're stuck with it forever. But how many of us do that? How many of us do that to ourselves? Something from 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 months ago, that we are holding on to it desperately in a way that actually isn't serving our being able to heal, our being able to move forward. So one of the questions that really came up for me is, how do you meet yourself on this journey of transformation called life? How do you hold yourself? It's all well and good to say, I want to trust myself. But if I'm beating myself up for things that happened maybe ages ago, or even if it's something that happened this morning, how do we navigate the fact that we are being invited always to be in process, to always continue to shift and to grow? And so this particular section of her book the block is self-neglect. All the ways we neglect taking care of ourselves. And the breakthrough is self-care. Now, self-care, honestly, is like a very overused term. And I want us to think about self-care as being more than a mani-pedi. I love my mani-pedi, don't get me wrong. But I want to invite us into thinking about it as being around a space of consciousness, that we're actually conscious of how we're being invited to care for ourselves. So the way you see and treat yourself within your life, guess what? That is your life. This is one of the foundational principles of unity. That we are creating the experience of whatever it is we're navigating. And a big piece that it always comes back to is, how do we hold ourselves? How do we treat ourselves? And I would say it even goes back one further, which is how we see ourselves is also how we understand God. And if we don't fully trust the divine, then guess what? We don't fully trust ourselves. So we're being invited to not see ourself and others, but ourself, focus right here for one moment, from fear, from doubt. We're being invited to see ourselves through the prism of love, as this glorious light being that we are. And so the question that she invites us to start with is, how can I see this differently? Whatever this is. Y'all know what it is you're carrying around, right? How can you see this differently? How can you hold it from a place of love and compassion? How can you let yourself off the proverbial hook? We talked a lot about forgiveness last week. And that forgiveness, it's both ways, right? I mean, I said, as Edwene Gaines said, holding on to resentment is like drinking poison and expecting it to kill the other person. So we're being invited, right, to release something so that we can be more wild and more authentic. What I love about this chapter too is I felt like it really aligned with our core value of authenticity. We are being invited to not be afraid, but to show up as our most absolutely brilliant, authentic self. And in order to do that, self-care isn't optional. It isn't something that you kind of squeeze in. I am so guilty of this. I was reading this chapter and going, oy vey, right? I love this quote from Anne Lamott. Almost everything will work again if you unplug it for a few minutes. Including you, right? And it's funny how within ourselves we can get so caught up. Like I can see it in Chris. I'll say to her, I'll be like, honey, you're banging your head against the wall. Stop, take a break, walk away, come back to it. You'll be more inspired. Do I do that myself all the time? Probably not, right? Taking rest is a private revolution. Rest is a commitment to who you want to be. We live in a world that prioritizes, glorifies, praises overwork. That is the world we live in. The harder you work, the better a person you are. The longer you work, the better a person you are. What if we turn all of that on its head? And this is the part about letting go of what other people's ideas are and really showing up and being authentic to our own needs. I have always kind of realized that I go in cycles, right? Like I go through periods of intense bursts of energy, and then I go through periods where I'm just a little bit more sluggish, a little bit more slow, a little bit more contemplative, a little bit more tired. And this world doesn't support that kind of an internal system. So what ends up happening is I push through those periods where I might need to be resting. But then what that means is that I don't then have energy when the energy is supposed to be full and free. Then I'm not able to access it in the same way. And I loved this distinction, right? An exceptional life. Does everyone in here want an exceptional life? Yeah. I don't know about you, but I'm not settling for mediocrity, are you? No, we want exceptional lives. So an exceptional life requires more and less. High alert. How many people in here function on high alert? All right? That is one frequency, but deep alert. That is another, and that's the alert that we want to be allowing to move through us. So nourishing ourselves is actually a requirement. It is a requirement because love requires love, and love begets more love. I always say that we are our own answered prayer. And how she phrased this is how you treat yourself is your prayer to yourself, your highest divinity. Devotion to yourself is devotion to the divine. Can we make that connection? In our affirmative prayer process, we talk about the integration of our divine humanness. We talk about the I am that we actually are. How many of us make choices in our day-to-day from that understanding? That if I lie around in bed reading a trashy historical fiction mystery novel. That's my little thing, right? That is actually devotion to myself, devotion to the divine. That somehow I am making space for something else to arise within me. And this is, when we start talking about authenticity, when we start talking about really showing up, we're talking about being willing to be vulnerable. Willing to stand there and say, yep, this is me. This is me. And I may not conform to all the things that you think I'm supposed to conform to, but this is me, because the truth is that it is absolutely exhausting to deny our authentic self. Anybody in here ever experienced that? When we say no to our authenticness, we are actually tiring ourselves out. We are not rejuvenating ourselves. We're not allowing ourselves to be restored and renewed. Self-care is soul care. And that's what I would like to call it, right? Self-care really sort of is talking about a surface thing. So how much soul care do you actually take? Are you giving your soul exactly what it wants and needs? And when we're navigating this, of course, we come up with, I put this picture in. This is an example of my and Chris practicing soul care. That's my wedding dress. Right? Now, how many people in here have been married in fuchsia? Right? Is it so me? So when I told all my friends that I was getting married in fuchsia, all of them were like, oh my God, that's amazing. There were other people in my world who were, you're going to look like a bridesmaid. I was like, honey, no one's going to mistake me for a bridesmaid at my own wedding. That is not going to happen. Number one, right? But it's interesting, all these demands that we conform to something. Now, part of this is that as a queer woman growing up, I never imagined myself being able to walk down the aisle. So I never had this cultural indoctrination about what it was that I was supposed to look like or how it was supposed to show up, because I never thought it was in the realm of possibility for me. What a gift. Because Chris and I got to create what we wanted to create, something that represented who we were authentically. Now, there was so much pressure, and anybody who's gotten married knows this, right? So much pressure. Aren't you going to invite blah, blah, blah? It's like, no, they've never met Chris. Why would we invite somebody who doesn't even know my wife? Because they're family or because, and it's like, no. No. But did it ask something of Chris and I? Absolutely, right? We had to be really clear about what it was that we wanted, what was our authentic expression for what was going to be a magnificent celebration of our love. So this brings us to sacred boundaries. Can you feel how this ties right into sacred boundaries? So watch that series again. Right? It's on our YouTube channel. You can watch all 4 of them again. But real relationships support the real you. Really take that in. Real relationships support the real you. Not the person that they expect you to be, not the person they want you to be, but the real you. So you can never lose authentic love by being who you truly are. You may lose acquaintances. You may lose people who you thought were nearer in that space of intimacy. But you have to be listening. Who truly supports your authentic self? If you don't respect your wishes, no one else will. Amen. All right? And we have to be willing to disappoint people. Tama has a great example in there where she walks into a shop and the woman is talking and 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 talking, and Tama just wants to be in the shop. But she's trying to people please, and she's not trying to be rude. And so she's nodding, and then finally she says, I really don't want to talk. I just want to look around on my own. And the woman follows her and continues talking. And in that moment, Tama realized that that person wasn't being respectful to her. So does she need to bend over backwards for somebody who's not actually listening? And right, our relationships are give and takes. They're not, I get everything and you get nothing. So she left. She finally caught it, and she leaves the shop rather than continue to endure something that wasn't what her beingness was calling out for. She wanted to just look at pretty art and be inspired and stay in that being place. And that wasn't possible. So part of what we get to bring into creating our sacred boundaries is an intentionality. We're being invited to be very intentional about what our priorities are. What is it that really matters to you? One of the examples she brings up is, she says, Martin Luther King, this amazing human. Do you think he cared about the baby seals? Of course he did. But was that what he was called to be here and to do? He had his intentionality around what he was called. What was that authenticity for him? And I love this idea here. We will never find time. And I altered the quote slightly because I just want to be much more declarative. We must take time, right? We must take time for the things that we know are going to nurture us. Intentionally take time. If we're thinking, I have to find time to, how often do we say that? What if we shift that? I am taking time to. Can you feel the difference? And losing time is like losing blood, because time and attention create your dreams. So what she's doing here. So we often say in Unity that it's all around where is our attention and where is our intention. But what she's saying is about, and now how do you make it real? You have to make time to make it real. We're doing that wedding expo, and I've been asking for postcards and things like that basically for 2.5 years. And I finally realized, okay, I get to do this. It took me, 2 afternoons, and it was done. Intentionality, but I had to take time. Not find time, take time. And the other piece that I love is that when we really do listen to our authentic truth, we're part of something that is much bigger that we don't even get to know about. So Cindy's project with the kids and the art and I wish you should talk to Cindy about how in unexpected and just amazing ways, from that authenticity that she was like, this is cool, I love this, let's do this. From that truth of her showing up, children and adults, and the way it becomes something that spreads out into the world. And Cindy's never going to know the full impact that her work has had, ever. Isn't that kind of cool? That it keeps going. It keeps going, and it keeps going, and it keeps going. So there's so much value in actually honoring our authentic truth. And that ties into to making time versus finding time. We find time to do the dishes. We have to make time to listen to our most authentic self, not the other way around. Right? Not the other way around. I love how in the book she talks about what a mess she is. right? She's completely unorganized. Tama is a mess, right? And it took her the longest time to just embrace that, because it was part of how she shows up in all of her creativity and all of her stuffness. And she also discovers that she's capable of being structured and folding a blanket exactly the way the blanket needs to be folded, right? So the practice for this week that I want to invite us all into, right, is just sit with what part of you really needs more compassion right now? Where are you beating yourself up? Where are you holding yourself hostage? What can you see differently in your life that will allow you to free that wild, wild well-being, not that contained well-being? Where's your fuchsia wedding dress? And how can you take rest? How do you rest? Do you actually rest? Right? Do you actually rest? What does that look like for you? And one of the things she says in the book is like, and it's okay in the midst of trying to make rest that you feel discombobulated, a little lonely, a little awe. It's like, that's okay. We want to get past the habitual patterns and be able to listen to something that all of our day-to-day stuff like really covers up. No more distractions, right? You can distract yourself sometimes, but if it's all about the distractions, then you're missing an opportunity to really listen. If you allowed yourself, what would you like to do? Isn't that a great question? No limits. What would you like to do? Blow it up. Blow it wide open. That's how I came up with going to Japan and doing the pilgrimage in Japan. Right? If I could blow it up, what would I do? Oh, I want to go spend 3 weeks in Japan walking around there. Maybe if you're more of an image person, you can create a collage of what you would like to do, of what inspires you, quotes, images, something that you can keep referring back to so that you can stay inspired. And where do you need to draw a boundary in your life? Where are you being called to really place yourself, highest self, not your little self, but your highest self, front and center? And where can you be more intentional with your time and your energy so that you are making time for the things that inspire you, making time for the things that will rejuvenate you, that will enable you to be able to show up. This world moves so quickly. It is almost impossible to keep up with news cycles. They just, right? So how are you practicing taking care so that you have deep roots, so that you don't exhaust yourself, so that you don't start circling the drain and falling into hopelessness? And then what would it be like if you actually gave yourself a sanctuary day? Give yourself a Sabbath. Give yourself part of a Sabbath. If this is really hard, because believe me, I get it. What if you gave yourself a 5-minute Sabbath? You make time for 5 minutes to do something, anything that will rejuvenate you. Looking at beautiful art in a book, right? Or online. Don't get sucked in, right? The point is to do the things that rejuvenate you. This piece is so important. It's so important. And I know there might be some of you sitting there going, well, I'm retired, so, all of my time is rest. No, I'm talking about an intentionality about what you are doing with all that time. Not just slipping into patterns of being, of behavior and activity, but focusing on the beingness behind that. Can you feel the difference? What would that change for you? Let's take this into our time of meditation. So the invitation is to just breathe into what is your understanding of soul care? What does that mean for you? If you were really going to take precious, precious care of your soul, what would you be making time for? What is it that would inspire you? What does rest really look like for you? What is the thing or the place or the activity that allows you to just be without judgment, without worry? What if you allowed yourself to just show up being gung-ho or wild about something that everyone else might look a little sideways at you about? But it is the thing that calls you forth. And so let's just continue to allow the process of listening from the deepest wellspring of our bodies, of our minds, of our hearts, not to the idea of who we think we're supposed to be, but the divine idea of who we already are. And let's just rest here in this spaciousness, listening deeply for a few minutes in the silence. And as we continue to listen, the invitation is to think of yourself like that hummingbird that wandered into this space, this place that is beautiful but yet limiting. And like that hummingbird, allowing yourself to just soar free, limitless possibility. Limitless potential. This is who we truly are. Bringing compassion, bringing so much love to ourselves, all the ways we think we fail. There are no mistakes in God. There are no mistakes. There is just that beautiful unfolding process of transformation as we continue to always reveal more of our true, authentic self. Never less, always more. And so it is. Amen. Ashe. So the affirmation today, I'll say it first and I'll invite you to know it with me, is I choose to see through the eyes of love. I nurture myself with compassion, rest, and renewal. Can we please know this together? I choose to see through the eyes of love. I nurture myself with compassion, rest, and renewal. And so it is.